Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next episode of All the Angles, the Business of Padel podcast, powered by the Hexagon Cup. I'm joined once again by my guest anchor, Enrique Buenaventura, founder of the Hexagon Cup. And in this episode, I'm delighted to have two of the main architects behind the Playtomic Global Padel Report 2024 on this call to discuss the findings. The report was released about a week or two ago to the public and obviously is being digested and reviewed rigorously by everyone in the industry, since it pretty much is a key reference point. Some call it the Bible of the industry. But as I mentioned, the opportunity to speak to the lead from Playtomic's side, Pablo Carro, and then Elena Martin, who is the other key architect and lead from Strategy which is part of the wider PwC network. So the two of them were on a panel at the Padel World Summit a few months ago to tease some of the findings from the report, but this is the first time we have the opportunity to really dive into the detail, the numbers that were released a week or two ago. Thank you for joining us for this episode. So let's start with a little bit of the background of the report. So this is not the first year. It's been going for a couple of years now, and is an annual day in the diary that everyone looks forward to really understand the state of the nation, the state of the sport, how things are evolving, how the growth is panning out, how the markets are developing. But I guess the first question I wanted to ask was the background, how the report came around. Why did you both come together and decide that this was a good thing to put together? How did it start, really?
So Pablo can tell you more about this, but he had the initial idea and he thought that there was no single point where you could find data on the industry, similar to what you have with soccer, with FIFA, or with tennis. There was nowhere to go when you wanted to check data on the industry. So he approached us. He approached me through a friend in common. And from our side, the story is quite funny because after COVID, it's been difficult to hire for professional services, I would say, as a general. And because they think that we're boring and we wear suits and they want to be in a startup, And so we thought that going into this venture would help us position us as a cool segment and that you can do cool things in consulting too. So that was the beginning of all of this.
And from your side, Pablo?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago we realized there was an excellent opportunity for highlighting the significance of, let's say, data-driven culture in the industry. I mean, Padel was growing, but nobody had real data about what's going there. At the end of the day, we are a tech company. Let's say we gather a lot of data, but we are not a consultancy firm for running a proper research. And as Elena said, I called Elena at that time, and I see we need to put together a professional team and we need to build something serious, right? Every single industry that is becoming, let's say, professionalized, they need this kind of research because it gives reputation, sector knowledge for making decisions. I mean, at the end of the day, every single stakeholder on a daily basis, they make decisions and they need something to back their decisions with real data. And that's the story. And we publish it every year and we update numbers and we try to headline what's most relevant. And I think 2024 has been a great exercise as well.
And obviously, a lot of the information that comes out of the report is kind of carried in headlines around the world. You see that the headlines from this year were the 51 new clubs every week being built over the last 12 months and 111 new courts being laid every week in the same period. Those are kind of the types of numbers that get thrown around in the media. But do you guys get formal or informal feedback from other stakeholders in the industry saying, we needed your numbers, we used your numbers, it helped us close this deal, it helped us secure this partnership, it helped us secure funding? Do you kind of get that sense that it's really making a difference behind the curtain as much as in front?
Elena, it's a good question, by the way.
I didn't get a lot after the report. I did get a lot of messages like the month or the 6 weeks prior to releasing the report. When are you releasing the 2023? So it's data of 2023. When are you releasing the new report? We're looking forward to that. I'm thinking about, we need to budget next year. We're waiting for the report to come in order to make it more accurate. So I did receive a lot of messages before and asking me, please let me know whenever it's out. And I said, man, you're going to know when it's out.
It's true that from our side, for example, Hexagon, that obviously we've put in place investors deck and so on, that we use a lot of the data. And we are waiting to receive the new report to update those investors deck or those conversations we are having, because it's where everyone is basing. And a lot of the reports that you see, a lot of the investors decks that you see in the market, you can see in the disclaimer based on the Playtomic PwC report. No? So it's
every single deck
standard. Yeah, absolutely.
Every single deck that we even receive in Playtomic contains part of our report. It's interesting because it has become the reference. Yeah.
That graph where you have the different countries in terms of their maturity, I've seen that so many times, which leads me to two sub questions. One, do you get recommendations from people about what they want to see in the next report because it would really help them and their business?
Absolutely. No, we feel the pressure, Alex. We feel the pressure. Not prime ministers, but we've received pressures from many countries saying, "Hey, you need to include specific slides about my country in this report." We can disclose which country was, but we've received a couple of threads about incorporating their country in the report in a good way, let's say.
And have you found a way to secure commission from all deals that your report has supported?
Yeah, I was speaking with my friend about a specific conversation with a landlord, and the Global Padel Report helped him to close the negotiation with the landlord because the landlord didn't know what is padel about. And with the report, he sent the report. He saw Pricewaterhouse inside. He saw Playtomic as a significant size company backing it, and he started to believe in him. So we would love to have our markup in every single deal in the industry, but I don't think it's going to be possible.
Not the case.
Okay, well, that's one for the future. So let's kind of look into the 2024 report in a little bit more detail. Obviously, I mentioned the 51 new clubs and the 111 new courts in the last 12 months. As the chief pen holders, the chief architects of the report, what do you think is really the key takeaways from your point of view? Like, what are the key trends that you noticed over this last 12 months and maybe how it was different from what you expected or what you forecast in 2023?
Well, I wanted to highlight these 51 clubs every week because for me, as a consulting professional, I would say the main takeaway is that growth continues to be very large, like the growth of the industry in terms of installation of paddle courts is about 17%, which is massive at the number that we're at this point, because having big growth when the base is small is easier. So confirming that we're still growing at double digit and that the backlog plus the courts that have already been installed, what has been installed for the first half of 2024, confirming that this is growing at double digit again, for me was the most important figure of the report. So having said that, the growth was a little bit smaller than what it had been for 2022 and 2021 because of the post-COVID effect, etc. So we wanted to highlight that still moving from 20 to 17 with a larger base is very relevant and what it implies on a, let's say, weekly ratio.
Now, on top of what Elena said about the growth and the expectations for the future, we've also incorporated a big portion of the customer intelligence that we have. We've run surveys, focus groups, etc. So we again confirmed that apart from paddle becoming a worldwide sport, the behavior of the players and this multi-club component, and more importantly, the social aspect of the community is being highlighted. Why? Because I mean, the UK is a great example. I mean, we've seen an incredibly high ratio of open matches in the UK that we were not expecting. So that means that the sport, the essence of the sport, driving force of the sport, that social component that everyone talks about, it's also confirmed in geographies. I mean, the UK is a great example, or the US or Germany. So, I mean, this kind of multi-club player playing with people that they don't know each other, and this open matches trend is a great highlight for us.
So one thing I wanted to pick up on your point, Elena. So I think last year you forecast that the growth would not be as high as it was during the COVID periods, but the number that you ended up with, the 16 to 17%, is still lower than you forecast. Is there a reason why there's that delta between what you forecast last year, understanding that COVID was already fading out, and it's still just a touch lower than that when you actually see the numbers?
The answer to that. The thing is, we were not aware, so we didn't know that we had the COVID effect there, right? Something that we have acknowledged once we've continued to follow with manufacturers and talking to them and interviewing them and knowing about their backlog and how they're feeling the industry, etc. So they said that there's installations that had been postponed, and we didn't notice. It's not that in the previous report I forecasted that there was a COVID effect and that it would slow down. We didn't anticipate that. We just noticed after it happened. That's the first answer. And the second is that the two big markets that have not met the expectations are mostly Spain, which is already very saturated, so it's not important. And also Italy didn't meet the expectation, but it's growing fast anyway, so we don't see any signs of that the industry is not healthy there. What I'm saying is that the ones that are the largest are the ones that have had the highest impact, which is nothing surprising.
Sure.
But none of them is for me sending any signs of worriness because Spain is saturated. In Spain, we were expecting more of a renewal rate, and we're not seeing that renewal rate or not as fast. And Italy was a little bit slower, but as I said, it's still growing. It's consolidating as leaving Sweden apart as the second country in terms of development. All the statistics and the numbers also that Playtomic has are confirming that it's a very healthy industry there. So it's something that we didn't anticipate, and the countries that have not met the expectation are not any worrying geographies.
And do you think that the 16% growth rate that we saw in the last 12 months, do you think that's a normalized growth rate? That's what we could probably expect going forward? Or do you think actually that growth rate is going to fluctuate itself?
This is very difficult to answer because there's so many countries that are in a very incipient stage, such as, for example, the UK, the US. Even if you see that the curve is tipping up, both the UK and the US have a lot of potential, not to mention Germany, where there's some, I'd say, license administrative burden that is it's not allowing it to grow as fast as we expected. But if any of these countries just start growing at the rate that we expect, then this figure is going to shift because these are the big countries that have a lot of weight. For example, that Belgium or the Netherlands are 200 courts up, 200 courts down, doesn't move the needle. But if we see the US, for example, really explode, let's say Paddle made it to college sport, I don't know, then we could see these figures really to change. And because it's not a stable market yet, because it's very incipient, it's very difficult to forecast now. Now, we always do forecast based on a, let's say, best effort or best guess scenario, but with such an immature market, it's very difficult to say.
And just you touched on the US. Actually, the college angle is something that I don't think gets covered in the global paddle discussion, but I think it's incredibly important. I know this because my brother was a college tennis player and it made a huge impact. And once you see that world and you see how important it is to American parents as to how much energy and investment they put into their children and which sport they choose to invest in that country, but you also see how important it is to international players in terms of those who are looking to balance their academic development with their sport development. It is a game changer, and I'm going to hopefully do an episode on all the angles to explore that evolution in a lot more detail. But I 100% agree with you that switch could be seismic for not just the US market, but for the global numbers.
That would be a game changer, especially in the US, Alex, for sure. But we need time for that. We are right now, what is happening in the US is that we are building
In the report in the US, what I found really interesting is you mentioned that the US has a lot of buzz, but the courts haven't quite reached that same level or that same velocity. But interestingly, right at the front of the report, you notice that 45% of the report reading was done in the US for last year. It's fascinating that you've got this incredibly frothy interest and curiosity and, shall we call it, case building for the sport. And it almost feels, and I think this is your conclusion about the US, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're almost, if not already, we're at the tipping point where that interest and curiosity and planning is now starting to deliver in terms of courts and clubs.
Definitely, Alex. You're totally right. 2023 and 2022, probably we were generating the buzz in the industry. I mean, just introducing the sport, talking about it, but I mean, the infrastructure takes time. So what we've seen so far in 2024 is the confirmation that this path is becoming, let's say, productive and a real thing. We know that 600 cores are going to be delivered in the US in the next 12, 18 months because we talk to every single manufacturer. We build a quite sophisticated report and we know how to measure it. And we know that these 600 cores will, not the tipping point, I mean, it's the starting point of the sport there.
No, and one thing to add on this, so obviously at Hexagon, we are looking for new teams to add. Most of the requests come from people in the US that they want to build a team, to do a team in Hexagon, because that will help them in a new project that they are building based on padel clubs. So they all saying, look, if I do a team, it could help me to promote my padel club that I'm about to start the project. And I'm planning to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clubs in the next 5 to 10 years. So most of the requests and most of the interest come from the US, and precisely to promote a new plan they have on padel clubs. So definitely they are investigating, they are getting the information to start building.
I got contacted, I told you, from the previous report to this, I have been contacted with several, I'd say, investors, private investors that want to build courts, and it's exactly as you mentioned. There's a lot of interest. The sentence on that the courts are not there yet, it's because we have some 500 courts, 600, I don't know. But if you take into account, let's say only the regions where padel is developing really, which is Florida, New York, California, this is something about 90 million people. And if you take into consideration the population that lives there, the number is very low. Having said that, as you said, there's a lot of interest, Hexagon, the internet research, the contacts that I guess Pablo also gets some of those. So I think there's a lot of interest, but we need to see this number grow, because 600 for 90 million is still quite low density.
Sure. I just wanted to move on to, there's a page in your report where you talk about 5 or 6 of the factors that you believe are driving the growth of the industry as you look at it in 2024. But you prioritize tech and professionalization as the 2 that you think are really ahead of the others. Can you explain a little bit more why you think that those 2 are so important? And especially because in the professionalization, the next page you talk about the B2B conferences being really important to the growth of the industry and the business around the game. So I'd love to know a little bit about why you felt tech and professionalization, as you define it, are kind of the biggest growth factors.
Well, I can explain tech for obvious reasons, but let's say that every single industry needs to be supported and, let's say, managed through a proper tech platform. Every single industry. If we talk about a new industry like padel, every single club owner, club manager, they think about the tech piece just after the construction permissions, etc., because they know it's going to be their brain. But not only that, it's also because it's going to be their marketing tool. So that's on the club side. But more importantly, on the user side, what happens is that if we really want to engage new generations, we really need to deliver a social app, something that will drive adoption, something that will make the people play more, and something that boosts the practice of the sport. And this is the role that we play at Playtomic, is facilitating and promoting the social joy of racket sports. And this is our job, and we are one of the tech companies that we are doing that in the market, right? But it's very important because the club needs efficiency and because the player needs a great user experience, and especially new generations.
I see, and I was discussing this with a friend the other day. So precisely Playtomic, it's one of the reasons of the upside of padel versus tennis, for example, in the latest years. So tennis, I've been a tennis player, and tennis players have been used for many, many years to arrange their games by people they know and so on. So padel, it's been growing, especially, and I would say outside Spain, it's been growing together with Playtomic, together with the technology and the fans and the communities around it. It's everything around that technologically community, no? So a lot of the people say, no, all my games are arranged by Playtomic. So all my games are arranged by technology. No? So this is amazing, and that's, from my opinion, one of the reasons why padel is growing so fast and in such a big community, because it has that social aspect and a social aspect around the technology. So I think for me, it's been key, and obviously the more it evolves, the more quickly the sport will evolve. Yeah.
And what about the professionalization piece?
Yeah, I can get that. So I think I mentioned this at the Hexagon event the other day in London. The thing is, now the sport now has developed mainly funded by, I'd say, well-connected, wealthy individuals. And there hasn't been a lot of, there hasn't been a lot of institutional money, meaning funds, private equities, etc., into the industry. So why I think professionalization is key, because in order to get it to the next level, we need these figures and these multiples and we need the figures to prove that this is a successful, profitable segment or market to invest in, and that this is consistent a long time. So that's why I said that professionalization at this point in time is very important. And these people that are investing at this point, they need to secure that the courts will be there at the point in time they expect, that they meet the quality they want, that the price they was committed. So this institutional money doesn't want uncertainty. They don't want to be changing their pitch plan or their plans or their Gantt or their calendar all the time. So that's why I said so. And regarding technology, and adding to what Pablo and Enrique said, I'm recommending all the investors that get in touch with me to ask me what are the figures there, how much may a court cost. Now we had 3-4 pages on the economics of building a court in the report for the first time, because I get asked those questions a lot, very often. And I always tell them it's fine. So you need to get the capacity, you need to secure the land and install the court. At some point, you need to secure the use, right? The average use. And this can't be done just by placing the court there. So you need to have people come and want to play in your court, and that it's easy for them to reserve and to know when they want to make a reservation and to know when the court is going to be available. That's one point. And the second point is, if you are a large investor, as I mentioned before, professionalization, etc., institutional investors, if you want to scale the business, you need some technology and be able, I don't know, to move people from one club to another of your own, although Playtomic has a lot of users that really are open club users. But from an investor standpoint, you can also use the technology or the platform to move demand from one club to another and to optimize your utilization.
I think that actually takes me to one of my final points on the report or its key conclusions. Maybe I'm crazy to be surprised, and please tell me otherwise, but the idea that effectively 71% of players play at more than 4 clubs. You had 90% who play at more than 1, and then you had 71% who play at more than 4. That for me is bananas. Like, I don't play at that many clubs. Is the reason for that because people play when they're on holiday? Because that's the only time I really play at other clubs, is when I go on holiday. And there is where I use Playtomic, because my club doesn't use Playtomic, but when I go abroad, I need Playtomic to kind of access courts in Spain or access courts in Portugal. But I was a little bit surprised that people play at so many clubs.
It could be surprising, especially if we think about through the tennis mindset. I mean, because in tennis, you tend to play in just one club, in your club, your country club, your members club, etc. So that's the first bias, let's say. Secondly, depends on the market. Obviously, Enrique in London has few options, let's say 3, 4, 5 options he can play. Elena in Barcelona, she has 20, 25, 30, 50 plus. Myself in Madrid, I have 100 plus. So depends on the supply, obviously. But whenever the market is developed, the crucial thing is that the nature of the sport, I mean, it has a multi-club component. Why? Because, I mean, you really want to play and you really want to enjoy and have fun while you do sports, while you meet new people. So, I mean, it doesn't matter, or it matters less the club you're playing at. Obviously, if you have 100 options like myself, I finally play in 5, 6, 7 places, not in the 100 clubs, because I do like the clubs that I like, or because the location is better for me. But at the end of the day, the essence of the sport and the nature of the sport and the driving force of the sport is not the facility itself. You need to enjoy the offline experience, let's say, absolutely. But it goes beyond that, right? I mean, it goes beyond my club. So this is the reason why the report was showing that, the people is playing in multi-clubs.
I think for you it's so surprising because and Pablo and I have discussed this a couple of times. In general, when padel starts, what it happens is that it's usually starting, except for Sweden, for example, it starts developing in, say, tennis clubs. So you belong to a club, then they build a court, and then you start trying it. It's not that by random you go online and you try to find a court. I mean, it happens, but it's not the most common. So that's how it starts. So that's why for you it's so surprising. But at some point, the facilities start being built outside of existing clubs, which don't have, let's say, members. And then when the sport develops a little bit further, some courts start to be built outside of these existing membership-based clubs. And that's where what Pablo explained starts to happen. That people, I don't know, when I go to Madrid and I have work colleagues and they say, okay, let's go play somewhere. But none of them is a member of a club where we all can go, or at least it's not like the way it works. We just go online, check a club that we like, that where the facilities are nice, that it's not, let's say, crappy courts, facilities that we like, that is not so far, that is close, because Madrid's a big city too. So, and we say, okay, let's play there. And then we just, 4 of us go there, just pay. And this is how it works once the country starts to be well developed.
Exactly. I think it's a matter of offer and demand. Here in London, as Pablo was saying, if I want to play tomorrow, I will check the 3 clubs that are close to my house. Probably they will be full. The next club, it's an hour away. In Madrid, you have less than 10 minutes. You have, I don't know how many, but 20 options. No? So you will check 1, 2, 3, 4. If they are busy, you will check the others. You will find one at the end. So that's why at the end of the year, you will end up playing in more than 20 different clubs, because there's a lot of options around here, obviously, in London. And that's why you are surprised. You will have the 2, 3, 4 options. From there, you will need to start moving around big distances.
Is that a problem for clubs though? Because then you find that there's lesser loyalty to a particular set of courts or a club, because people are literally shopping for availability first before brand and club.
If the experience for the players is crap, I tell you, no matter the demand is super high, the people will play once and they will leave and they will talk bad things about that specific location, so they'll never get back to that club again. So it matters. I mean, it really matters. But what I tell you is that the essence of sport, this social component, promotes a multi-club behavior rather than a single club membership close community. This is what I was trying to explain, and depends obviously on the country, because and the level of development of the clubs in each country.
If the facilities are good, there's still loyalty. When I told you this example of my colleagues, so there's a place we like, we try to go there. If there's no court available, we prioritize playing over the place, obviously. I mean, up to a point. It's not that we're going to drive long distance to a place that we find is not nice only for the sake of playing. But so in the first priority is we want to play. Second, it's we want this place. If that place is not available, then is when we look for other options. So it's a balance, I would say. If the experience is good, it still creates stickiness.
And you cover a bit about what are the main roadblocks to the growth of padel, and you specifically focus on the regulatory aspect in markets, and you focus on Germany as a case study, and then real estate prices as another potential stumbling block. Do you feel like there is an opportunity for those to be overcome, or do you feel like those are going to be pretty stable, especially in the markets where they currently exist?
Regulation, I think it's going to change. The thing is, in countries like I mentioned Germany, but the US is very similar. So the thing is, because there's no specific regulation for getting an an activity license for padel, you assimilate it to, let's say, the closest or the most similar that you get in the country. So in Germany, it happens to be complicated. You need time and you need to hire someone to do this. And so it's hindering the growth, because for an investor, it takes longer time, it takes more money, so the return needs to be better. What I think will happen is that at some point there will be some specific regulation, so they will adapt it to the needs. It's like you start doing something, you get the closest there is existing, but the regulation, I think, they will adapt. It's the same in the US. If you build a court, I mean, it depends on the states, but in general, if you build a court in an existing, let's say, tennis club, for example, it's easier. But otherwise, it may take you 1 year to get the license. And for that year, you'll be paying the rent, or you'll have to buy if it's the case instead. So it's not that the regulation is stopping it, it's just that it's making it more difficult and it becomes more expensive. Mm-hmm. And this gets us to the second point. I think real estate prices is the issue, because the other one will evolve. And if you take it to the simplest, which we showed in the report. This is a real estate business. You rent a land, you put something there that could be a store, it could be a restaurant, and now it's a paddle court that you rent out for people to play. So if real estate prices are expensive, your fee for playing will be expensive too. And in the London gathering, they were saying that playing in London or in the UK is still very expensive. Yes, but the real estate there is very expensive too. So if someone wants to invest, they're going to rent a land, which will be expensive. They'll invest in it, placing a court, and they want to get a return. So this is something that is probably more difficult to solve, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And besides that, the more the paddle is developed in a city, the easier it is to build a new club. Why? Because if you are the technical guy of a city hall, the first time you see paddle, it's like, what is this? What is this? Is this tennis? Is this squash? No, it's a different thing with fences. It's a cage with glasses. This is dangerous. What about the wind? What about the exits? What about? Everything is a mess. Everything is strange. Everything is unknown. The club number 10. This same technical guy that is giving the approval to the project. He knows perfectly what is he talking about. He'll probably play at the clubs he has already approved. You know what I mean? So it's a different story, but it takes time. As Elena said, in real estate and infrastructure, projects are always complicated. And paddle, if you think about it, it is a sophisticated thing from a construction perspective. It's not pickleball, right? Yeah. It involves complicated items, stuff, not only the basement, but also the glasses, as I said, the turf, the fences, the wind in combination with the rain. It's not easy. We are so familiar with it, but it is not.
You can see it in London. In London, outdoors, okay, you're getting a lot of licenses, but indoors it's very complicated. And obviously, London weather is not the same as in Spain. So you need the indoor clubs to play more, to develop the players, and to get a better level of players. No, until these indoor clubs or these licenses for indoor clubs are given away easier, it would take more time to develop paddle in countries like the UK. No, so it's not that just Germany, but it's also the UK with indoor clubs. No, so until these regulations speed up the process, because it's long processes, it will delay the development of the sport in the country. As Elena was saying, having more expensive locations will mean that it will be more expensive to rent a court. That means that it becomes very niche. If it becomes very niche, it will be very difficult to get good professional players in that country. No? So it not only affects the business, but it affects also the level of competition of that country.
I've got two big questions left that hopefully we can squeeze in the time available. One is about the future of the report, and one is about the future of the industry. So let's start with the future of the report. Like, going forward, you keep innovating in terms of adding extra details, case studies, focuses. What do you feel like are the next areas of insight that the industry really needs from a Playtomic report or from a similar report? For example, and again, I don't know if Playtomic can source this kind of information, but questions about what triggered people to pick up the sport of paddle in the first place is really useful. How many hours people play per player a week is really useful. Time spent at the club when they're not playing is really useful. Money spent per player on court and off court is really useful. I think most importantly, the demographics of the market. So, women, ABC1, ethnicity, disability. And also, I guess the final thing I would love to know is the connection between players to the pro circuit. And how do they engage with the pro circuit? Do they engage with the pro circuit? How can that be improved? Like, those are areas that I would love to see in the Playtomic Report 2025. But do you guys have a sense of what's on the roadmap of what you want to roll out in terms of insights?
Alex, to be totally honest, we've already shared a huge amount of information with the paddle community. I mean, part of this information has cost us a lot in terms of resources, because running a survey, running a focus group in 4 countries, I think, with hundreds of people is not cheap. But we feel that it's a responsibility as let's say the tech leader or the leader on this field to share with the community and to help to accelerate the growth of the sport overall for us. And we will obviously incorporate more stuff. We always have to improve the level of information that we provide, and we've already started that discussion with both teams, trying to figure out what next. And it's not already decided. We've just released the 2024 version, and we're still, let's say, surfing the wave that has generated, right, in terms of information, etc. But for sure, we will be adding more insightful things in the next years, for sure.
I usually don't anticipate what I want to include in the next report. Usually Pablo and I meet at the beginning of the year, and I say, look, I've had tons of people, let's say, writing me on LinkedIn or through friends or friends of friends or acquaintances, and I usually try to show what I've been asked the most. So if a lot of people are calling me to say how much it costs to build a court, what's the return on investment, what are the economics, how to run a club, etc., then I try to at least give a hint of the knowledge we have on what I get asked the most.
And what about the future of the industry? Obviously, your job is primarily to look at what's happened in the last 12 months and track that. You are backward looking and data driven. But just for a second, let's be forward gazing and crystal ball gazing. Like, where do you think the industry is going? Here are some things that are on my mind. For example, multi-racket sport venues increasing, especially in America, pickleball or squash or badminton. Is that the future, or are we still going to see paddle-specific centers being increasingly the focus? Are we going to see workspace or shared workspace integration, residential development integration, and also community-built and managed rollout? For example, in the UK and in the US, where you don't have a lot of community-driven, accessible courts, that is a key piece that I think is really missing to really help the sport grow, especially in a demographic that currently is being ignored. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. I'd love to know you guys. What do you think is really the future? What do you think is going to be in 2025 and in 2030?
Enrique, your turn. I mean, you've been in the paddle industry since almost the beginning. I mean, this guy has been playing paddle since 1995. Something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, absolutely. Or even before that, I would say. So I think, obviously, the example is Spain. So you have Spain as the example, and what I'm seeing is that a lot of countries are following the same pattern. Some countries will have it more difficult because of the weather, because of the regulations, but some others will follow exactly the same pattern and quicker because now we have professional tours that obviously with the media helps to develop the sports quicker. It could become an Olympic game at some point, and that obviously will help even more for brands to invest, for governments to invest. So that will accelerate what has happened in Spain. So I think that should be the trend in Spain. As you were saying, you have paddle in development communities. You have paddle everywhere. No? So there's a lot of buildings that before they had a swimming pool and a tennis court, and now they have the paddle courts, 1 or 2. They are starting to put the paddle courts in schools. So this is what has been happening over the last 30 years in Spain. I think we will see exactly the same in a lot of countries. We start seeing that already in the Middle East. So in the Middle East, in Dubai, they are putting paddle courts in some of the schools. No, so it will be a matter of how quick some countries get to where Spain is today, and how slow others do. No, but I think that's more or less the future that I see in 5-10 years time. Instead of being 2, 3, 4 countries, the ones that have paddle as one of the main social sports, have 20 countries, 30 countries, no? And obviously with that, it will develop the professional, the media product, and then we will have the 360, no? Not just the social aspect, but also the media product. No? As of today, it's still very, very low, but growing fast, as we have seen with Premier and obviously with Hexagon in the first event.
Pablo, Elena, you're not getting away. What are your predictions?
No, I mean, I just want to say this inclusivity that we need to push even more. Apart from what Enrique said, I think you were right expressing this, let's say, concern about the limited demographics that have access today to paddle because of the prices and because of the, let's say, the overall cost of the activity. So I think we have to become even more inclusive as a sport, trying to engage different type of social layers, and that's part of our job of the whole industry. So I like that, and I would support any initiative that drives that. And as a business, as Enrique said, if the UK, Germany, and the US and France also, they replicate the same levels of growth that Spain, Italy, and Sweden have shown, I think we have, I mean, a big job in front of us, a huge job in front of us as a business, right? For all of us. So the future is amazing.
And Elena, from your side,
I'm
closing
going
thoughts?
to be very pragmatic, and let's say from today and in 1 year time, what I expect. I don't expect, sorry to say that, but I don't expect, let's say, the prices to go down yet, or the expansion to be like dramatically changed from now. Probably we can, let's say, double the number of courts, but still the density and the availability of the courts, I don't think will be dramatically different in 1 year time, although we're going in that direction. But you asked me for the next 12 months. What I do see is more, as I mentioned before, professional, institutional money, professional initiatives like the one Enrique and colleagues have led, similar things, be it in terms of tournaments, in terms of funds being professionally invested and I'd say more systematically invested and asking for return, and with more of not an opportunistic, but rather a planned development plan. That's what I foresee. I foresee more professionalized, institutionalized initiatives in the industry, and the growth of the sector continuing at the path that it is today. But this path in 1 year time won't be like a game changer, right? So that's what I expect in 12 months time.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've run out of time. Thank you both, Pablo and Elena, for joining us for this exclusive conversation. It was incredibly useful. I obviously urge anyone who's interested in the paddle industry and its growth as a sector, as a business, to grab the Playtomic Global Padel Report 2024. As we've already discussed, it's used heavily in the industry and outside the industry to justify investments and strategies. It's definitely worth a look, a read. It covers a lot of aspects of the growth of the industry worldwide. But for now, thank you very much for joining me and Enrique on this conversation.
Thank you for inviting us, Alex.
We really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
We will reconvene on the next episode of All the Angles. Thank you very much.